Why are you looking at me like good?
Yes.
My name is Alexis Ramirez. I have been in this church for as long as I can remember. I've been in this church since I was a kid. I've been saved for as long as I can remember as well. I mean, I was raised a Christian and saved at a young age. Well, I heard Jesus all my life, but I feel like the real time I heard like who he actually is would be when youth started. But once youth started happening a long time ago, before all this, I really got to know who he actually was. The first time I encountered the Holy Spirit, it felt crazy. It felt, I think I was just shocked the whole time. Like, what is this? It was a little weird to me at first, especially like the speaking of tongues and stuff. I was like, oh my God, what's going on in my mouth? But I feel like my journey started actually in 5th grade. I started to have depression very early in my life. Actually, never attempted suicide in 5th grade, but they had put me in a hospital because I said I was going to attempt. And this was a time where my mom and my dad were together, talking, working things out, fighting, but them not knowing I know. It was very bland. My life was very bland. No church was involved as much. It was very, very bland. And after that incident with depression, my parents, at the time my mom was more spiritual and religious as my father. They just shoved my depression off to the side and they didn't really talk about it. After the hospital, I just came home and I went to my bed and felt the same way I was feeling. And my parents just didn't say anything. There came a time where my depression was it was just numb. It was just nothing. I didn't necessarily feel anything until obviously 14, it hit. I spent my 14th birthday with my dad. I left my mom. This is when I left my mom's house to go with my dad. And that was the first time I had psychological seizures where my anxiety would get the best of me and I would allow my body to go into a seizure where it would and I would end up in the hospital. This was a big toll on my parents because they were freaking out. They didn't know what to do. And my mom, she felt so overwhelmed with everything that was going on. This was quarantine time, so this was the time where my therapist was telling my mom I wanted to end my life because my depression had come back. After it was just overwhelming and we needed help. I went to my dad's. He wasn't religious. He was trying to restore the relationship that we never had as a kid. And it was good for a bit until I started opening up bad habits and I ended up going back with my mom. My mom started seeing changes in me. She found drugs in my Snapchat memories. My older sister was not doing good at that time. She was living with us, and there was a lot of drugs in my memories. And that's when I had to go back to my mom's house again. It was rough. It was rough because I didn't feel it was needed for me to go back when it wasn't my fault. I didn't do it. Like, I had my own will, of course, but I was still like super young and it was just there. And when you want to be a part of the world so bad, it's just, I never did the weed. I just took pictures of it. And that's when the other move happened. And when I ended up going back to my dad's permanently, he was very religious. He would blow his shofar on top of me. He would hold me down and blow the shofar and expect demons to come out of me. When he would do this, he would actually go to the bathroom and he would throw up himself. And living with this, I thought it was normal. Like, oh, when you manifest, you throw up yourself when other demons latch onto you and you throw up. When that's not the case, or really not what happens. That happens, that's a sign that they are manifesting and you are not manifesting unless you were throwing up. He was there, but he was never there. He would leave to like Texas and stuff, and I'd be home by myself. I would invite guys over all the time. There came a point where I went to a service and my stepmom was like, I had a dream about Alexis having. I freaked out. I was like, no way. Oh my gosh, I'm so dead. I'm so dead. My sister told me, And my sister was doing the same thing at the time, actually. And I cut that short. I cut the guy short, but I would still text him and stuff like that. And one time my dad came home early from work. He usually comes around 7, and this day particularly, he came at 3. And that's usually the time I had when guys would come over. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this God giving me a chance? So I didn't listen. Once I got back doing good, I took a lot of these things hard on myself, these little incidents. I was scared that this was a part of my life forever. Social media, the biggest stronghold of my life. I really needed social media. I needed Snapchat. I needed YOLO. Any social media you can think of except for Facebook, because that's for old people. I'm sorry if you have Facebook. And I posted every day. My dad was a very religious man. He's super religious. I remember on the night where I attempted suicide, he actually came home and he caught me on social media, and he blew up. And this was the hardest thing in my entire life, because I've never been with my dad face to face like that. Like whenever he came home, I had to switch my personality to God life, because that's what he expected of me. And it blew up in my face, and I went into a seizure. And he started laughing at me, and he went in the other room with my brother, and he started like talking about like if I'm pregnant and stuff, because he like saw a different side of me, I guess. And that's when he had a job interview and he had left, and that's when the attempted suicide, I guess, when you hold all these things up, it just blows up. I remember my dad would FaceTime call us, me and my brother. My brother was with me this whole journey. My brother was actually the one who watched me try to commit suicide, which was very, very hard for me, because I tried to drown myself. So when I was tying myself and stuff like that, he was just standing there. He was just watching me, and my dad was on the phone, and he was just like screaming, and like it was like, oh my gosh, what's she doing? What do I do? Who do I call? And stuff like that. And that was the hardest thing to forgive myself for, because how are you gonna like let your brother see you do that? But it's okay. By the grace of God, I forgave myself, and I asked my brother for forgiveness, and he comes sometimes. I still believing for that miracle in his life because of my dad. But that was the roughest thing. There's no good thing to hold on to these things. I remember when I went back home, I would reminisce on memories that I had before. Not the good ones, but the bad ones. And I feel like that's one of the tactics of the enemy. To jump into the old habits. When I came back to my mom's, I started reminiscing on all this stuff. And I went back to social media. I hid it, and I went back. I got an account back. I found some friends back. This was even harder, because I started forgiving myself. And then once the enemy took a hit at me, I just gave in. And once I gave in, I was like, oh gosh, now I gotta do all this stuff, gotta cleanse myself, gotta close all the doors. I didn't speak in tongues for a bit because I felt guilty. Like, how can I be speaking in tongues, and how can I be on the stage doing all these things? And I felt so guilty. I actually started reaching out to friends on social media in that time, and I started letting them know, like, dude, like, I gotta change, like, you know, the things I'm doing. And it would be friends that are not necessarily Christian, but they're not so bad. And they'd actually encourage me, like, just stay, like, just like go back to your dad, like call him and like text him and tell him the same thing you told him last time. The last time I told my dad, my mom's calling you this and that, she's gonna do this and that, I need you to come and get me, and this time I promise you I'll stay with you and I will never ever come back. And I'm gonna be so honest, I was so close to doing it. I was so close to just giving up. But the first thing that I did was I got on my knees and I told God, I said, is all of this pain worth it? Is all of this like heartache worth it? Is everything that I've gone through just gonna go in the trash? And then what? I'm gonna get older, I'm gonna be a young adult, and I'm gonna be okay, now it's time to get right. Now it's time to praise God.
why am I going to do that to myself? And everything that's in the dark, whether you're a Christian and your parents care about what you're doing or not, it's going to come to life. Like, no matter what you do, whether it's coming to life by a friend or by a leader or anything, it's always going to come to life. And that's what happened for me every instance. I remember I was in a camp and they were like, what's one angry word that you would describe God when you're angry? And I said snitch because it always felt like he was snitching me out and he was always telling someone what I was doing. But now I look at it and I'm like, I'm sorry, God, I didn't mean to call you that. Now I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, she was protecting me. So I don't get any deeper because I'm a very sensitive person. But even if you're not sensitive and you're like tough, everyone has a soft side. Even if it's like whether your relationships are failing, if like bringing up my dad brings me to tears and it hurts my heart. And whatever you're struggling with, there's always a sensitive. So I don't know, I feel like I need to say that because I feel like some people put on this strong suit, and I've learned that because my dad did that, and he put on a strong suit and he acted like he's the toughest of them all when in reality he's broken himself. So that's my prayer, to help my dad soften his heart. And I'm not mad at my father. I'm not angry at my father. I forgive my father. I forgive my mother for the past. I forgive my brother for not protecting me. I forgive my stepmom. I forgive everyone who's wronged me. I forgive my friends. I forgive everybody, and not because I'm soft. It's because if I don't forgive, then who's gonna forgive me? And I feel like when you're put in that position where you've done some horrible stuff and you're on your knees because of how broken you are and how much you need God, you come to the realization that you need to forgive others, because if you don't, then how are you going to get forgiven yourself? And I feel that that's just a lesson that everyone has to learn. I overcame the roughest season of my life by, I don't want to say suicide is the way out. You know, I don't necessarily know. I think it was God's plan. I know it's God's plan, actually. After the hospital, God didn't give me the decision to go back to my mom's and going back to the good. God said, you're going to. So by that suicide attempt and by everything that was open, like everything that my dad saw, I went to the hospital and there my mom was, like, and it was just out of my heart. I was like, oh my gosh, look at everything I've done. I have to, like, there's no way I can, like, and it's not safe for me. I can't go back to my dad's and then try again and then not fail this time. I balanced time with God in school. Honestly, I really haven't, this season of my life, I didn't do school. I actually was in and out of residential hospitals and therapies and living somewhere else until I got better. So it's actually a new season of my life to go into school. So I haven't really experienced the balance, and I had faith and he aligned everything the right way, was with my dad. Things were really rough with him, of course, a bunch of memories. I didn't know how I was ever gonna be able to get through it or ever gonna be able to break the soul ties. The relationships that I had, one of the biggest strongholds. And not only with a boyfriend, but also with my father. It was very manipulative. And I couldn't let go. I just had to be with my dad because he's my dad and that's it. I only have my mom. That's how my mindset was. I just left it alone. I didn't tell my mom, I need to see my dad. I learned from the fourth time I came back, and this is the time I stay, and I tell my mom, I'm letting it. I'm trusting God. My dad is over there. He can do his own thing. God will put in his timing, right? And now God aligned it because I'm thinking of writing him a card and telling him what I expect of a father, and if he can't go into that expectation, that's not God failing me, that's God protecting me. So in that way, I see it being aligned for me. Because I started to become two-faced. I started thinking like, oh, if I have this Instagram, like this, I'm posting God stuff, then like it's fine, but then once I double tap, it's a whole different me. So I realized, I'm just putting it out there, don't do that. But once I realized, like, what the heck am I doing? This is like two different people, two different gods. You can't serve two masters. That's when I deleted my other account, my like me account. It was so hard. Having so many followers, it's just as a teenager, you hold on to that. You treasure that because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm at my 10K. I'm like, oh my gosh, yay! Like, oh my, you treasure that. But once I deleted that account and it came to this one, which didn't have as many followers, I'm a influencer. I know that for myself. I influence people. But once I started seeing people change, when people seen my change, people started to two-face me in a way of like, oh, she's Christian. Oh, I'm Christian too. Oh yeah, we can be Christians together. Let's go drink. So it would manipulate me, and what ended up happening was I left it. I reactivated my old account, and I got it back. But once number 2, second round, righteous man falls 7 times and gets back up. It's okay. I did it again, wiped out, right? But this time it was actually in, I don't know where. And we sat down and like I just was spilling everything. Like, oh my gosh, it's hard. I was living with my dad, and we actually deleted my Instagram account together. And it wasn't like a reactivation; it was like a delete. Like you can't get it back. And that was like the end of the line for that. And this was shortly after the attempted suicide with my mom. And once it was just that and nothing else, and I had to sit with my discomfort like that. Like, okay, I'm trusting God. I did get hate. I do get hate. Even back then when I did have my other account and I would post something or I'd have God first in my bio, I would get DMs like, oh my gosh, it's kind of embarrassing to me, but I'm gonna be honest. I had a spam account, and this spam account, and I put it in my bio, the link to my bio, and on top of it, it had God first, and on bottom of it had that in my bio, and I was blind, right? And this guy DM'd me, and he was like, basically telling me, what are you doing? This is not right. In the Bible it says, and that convicted me to my core. And I think instead of people bashing me, people actually helped me. And I feel like that was all God's plan. I walk by faith and trust God by for me, it's simply standing there and letting God know, I trust you. Getting on my knees, even during my worship, or being like still giving all my junk to him, but me still dealing with stuff, like me giving all the bad relationships I've had and all the wrong things. I still get memories of guys I sleep and I have dreams of guys like in my dreams, and I'm like, what the heck? I let go of all this stuff. I let go of social media, but yet there's still a tug. I feel there's still a tug, but that's the enemy, of course. But in my heart, I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe this is the right path because it's right in front of my face. So in reality, no, that's not right. So I walk by faith by just simply shutting everything off, like all distractions, and simply getting on my knees and just saying, God, I trust you. You got this. You made a plan for it before. You can make it's a plan now. I get close to God by I read my word as much as I can, even though sometimes I fall short. Worshiping makes I feel closer than ever to God. Not even on the platform or on the microphone, but just in my room by myself. I feel like that's where I get my worship. Or even at night when I'm sleeping, just soaking there. Another way I get close to God is through people. People will strengthen you. Iron sharpens iron. So I feel like with the people I surround myself with, that makes me closer. Some desires that I had back then, it was very tough. It was very tough back then. I had really bad desires. I never really had a dad figure in my life, so I had a lot of desires of like guys and wanting a relationship and wanting someone to love me because my dad was never really there to love me. I just wanted what the world has, I guess, what a typical teenager wants: drugs and partying, and social media was a big factor in my life. That is hard. It was hard for me. Versus now, the desires of my heart have completely changed my view and everything. Now I desire more of the Holy Spirit. I desire breakthrough in the youth, definitely in our worship. I desire for our worship to not only be natural, but supernatural. I desire so many things, but I desire, obviously they're the desires of the world, but as you renew yourself in the Word and coming to church. In the youth, I want to see, right now I feel like it's us, right? Like the youth. all of us as a whole. But I feel division in like the room, and I feel like one are stuck over here and then one are like stuck over here. Not saying we're better than each other, one's better than each other, but we're just on our own paths. I like to see everyone as a whole fall on their knees and crying out. I feel like crying out is such a strong thing you can do, only for like the simple, like, I need you, God. I would love for everyone to come to the realization that they need God. And a revival in the youth, oh my, I've seen it already. I know it could happen again. Just like an ongoing, not a, we keep getting attacked, and I feel like it's for a reason. And I feel like, as you never know, like as much on how hard the enemy's kicking back, and I see that we're getting attacked a lot. So I just can't wait until we're all here as a whole. Whether, obviously there has to be some broken, right? I mean, not everyone's gonna be like up here all at our best all the time, but just for all of us to just, I don't know, get each other. I hate being looked at like, oh my gosh, like, what is she doing, or what are they doing, when you're in church? Like, that's what you're here for. And I love for everyone to see that, like, that's what you're here for. You're not here to laugh at the ones that are up there, What Jesus can do in other people's lives that I've seen him do in mine. Social media, guys, and bad relationship with your dad. I feel like those top three right there. Top three big problems in the world that people struggle with, whether it's you don't have a big social media, but you post pictures of yourself all the time, and you need the guy telling you you're beautiful, or you need the followers, or you need some sort of love out of that. In my life, God has definitely shown me that I don't need that at all, whether it's with the boys also. Actually, all of them align. I don't need that love, that type of love, that love that's going to feel good in the moment, but it's going to hurt later. God showed me that he gives me his love. So I feel like with other people, God can just swap, and change it. It's not easy, but yeah. Some encouraging words that I might have for people that has gone through something similar or the same, or bits of it are the same. I would say surrender. I mean, like, fully surrender. God, those empty spaces that you feel, or those things that you wish like you can have, right, that you can't, we're obviously of the world, God will replace it, and he will fill it with something even better. And even when you feel like you're not, I sometimes go to the store and I'm like, or I go to school, or I go somewhere where everyone around me is the same, but I'm the only one that's different. It discourages me in the moment, but that's the enemy, right? But I feel encouraged because I'm like, wait a minute, rokondo. You know what I mean? I feel authority because of who I'm in, you know what I mean? And then I just put myself in the shoes. Like, let's say you've gone through struggle, right? And then you're doing better. Put yourself in the shoes of how they may be feeling. You're gonna feel really good because you know what it felt to be broken, but now you're not broken, So it's gonna feel good to reflect, very good to reflect on where you were, and where you are now. You're just gonna be like, even when you do get those temptations to go back, or you see something poking at you, just think how you felt in the moment, and trust me, you will not want to go back there.